Hey everyone, Amiya here from Resonance Astrology. Welcome to Meet the Planets podcast. Today we're going to talk about the elusive, not able to touch planet Neptune. And I'm joined by Ashton Arnoldy, and he's going to introduce himself in just a second. We're recording this on February 28th around 3 p.m. Central European time. And yeah, we're entering, already we did that with Uranus, but now we're going fully into the realm of the outer planets. They're a bit different than the seven inner planets and the way we can engage with them. And Neptune is certainly always a planet that is, I mean, it's very hard to grasp Neptune. So I'm wondering how this whole episode will be, but I really hope we can actually kind of bring you a bit closer to Neptune, even though it's a planet that is very hard to like fully grasp and experience. And obviously now Neptune has just switched signs, so there is a lot to talk about because this is like the felt ingress and absence or new presence of Neptune. So, yeah, but before we dive in, Ashton, hi.
Hello, thank you for having me. Oh, there goes my
So,
phone. Um, my phone just fell off the shelf. Hold on just a second. You can cut that, right?
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. Okay. So,
It's already starting off Neptunian.
I'm like, how did that happen? Um,
Maybe it's actually interesting to leave this part in because that's like the ghostly presence of Neptune. He's like
yeah.
lurking in the background.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the sign on the horizon is right now. Probably, probably, well, I don't know.
Well, it is the MC is currently in Aries, not
Oh,
right where Neptune is, but
it's right
close
overhead.
by. So,
Yeah. Great. Well, my name's Ashton Arnoldy, and I'm tuning in from Dornach, Switzerland, and I'm from the US. I am an astrologer. I'm focused in Hellenistic astrology combined with archetypal astrology as taught by Richard Tarnas, and I just recently finished a PhD in the program that Richard Tarnas started out in San Francisco called the Philosophy, Cosmology, and Consciousness program. So I'm like interested in, I wrote about the evolution of consciousness, and I'm here doing some postdoctoral work connected with Rudolf Steiner. So yeah, that's a bit about me, and yeah, I can say more about that stuff maybe later, but
for
good to be here.
sure, let us know your Neptunian credentials,
What do you mean?
if you will. Just like where is your natal Neptune? How is
Oh,
it, how it's connected in your chart?
yeah, no, this is I think this is a great way to start because like it's easier to enter into like the significance of Neptune when we have concrete personal stories to tell about it. Well, the first time I had a professional astrology reading, it was with Becca Tarnas actually, and she really emphasized the placement of Neptune in my chart, and I hadn't really paid attention to it before, because I was just always more focused on like the personal planets. But it's conjunct my ascendant is at 16 degrees of Capricorn, and Neptune's at 21, and Uranus is at 22. And so it's rising, and then it's square my sun in Aries, and then it's opposing my Mars in Cancer in the seventh house by 1 degree. So that's one of the tighter aspects in my chart. So yeah, I feel like those are like the is particular placements that I feel I've experienced it, I guess, personally aside from transits, one transit really that I've observed. But what about you?
Well, we both have Neptune and Capricorn,
Hmm.
because Neptune stays in a sign for 14 years. It's a generational planet. Like that's what we usually call the outer planets, right? Because there's many people will have the same planet and the same sign. I'm not quite sure when Neptune exactly moved into Capricorn, but just a
I
year
think
later. Do you know that? Because
It was, I think, around, oh, I was going to say 84, but actually, I think that's when Pluto moved into um, Scorpio. We can find it later.
we can find it later. But yes, because my Neptune's like very late degrees of Capricorn, right? So a year after that, basically Neptune already moved into Aquarius. And yeah, even right now, you know, a lot of us, especially younger folks, we have maybe like two, three experiences of Neptune being in a sign. I would say mostly I don't know what Neptune in Aquarius really did in my life. I have a faint memory now of what Neptune in Pisces did in my life, and now we enter a whole new era and chapter with that Neptune Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. So I think it's an exciting time cosmically for everyone that is alive because everyone right now is experiencing Neptune in a completely new and different way and light.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like one thing that's sort of unprecedented about our time is that that's much more common knowledge than it used to be. That like just the discussion. I feel like of astrology. I mean, astrology's always been talked about, but like just with social media, like Neptune moving into Aries, like I just heard everybody was, aware of it, even if they didn't believe in it, they're like seeing memes about it. And I just checked and it was 1984 that it moved into Capricorn.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Beginning of the millennials, I feel like. Yeah.
For sure. I think all the outer planets, some look to Pluto, but I
Hmm.
will say that Pluto is, well, it's an interesting planet because it moves very differently throughout the
Hmm.
signs. It doesn't have that same, like Neptune, we can say Neptune is in a sign for 14 years. Pluto is like, depending on which sign it is, it's like eight
Yeah.
years or maybe 24 or something. So I wouldn't necessarily account for it for generations, but I do think all the outer planets, it's very interesting to observe them, right? Because again, when we made that switch, we briefly just talked about it before. I think there's definitely this thing in between like millennials and zillennials, like so we call them zillennials, right? Like between Gen Z and millennials. I think both of us fit into that group very well. I think everyone in like the 90s till like the year 2000 kind of fits into that group. But then really, I think the difference has been felt when Neptune and both Uranus are in the sign of Aquarius. So, and
Yeah.
Neptune does, I think, have this really prominent way of showing up in trends socially, culturally, and
Yes.
we'll talk about that more, unless you want to like say something from that right now.
Well, one thing I wrote, it's like in the midst of publication, but there's this journal called Archi that came out of the philosophy program that I was referencing, archetypal astrology, and they have an issue upcoming on the Uranus-Neptune sextile. And I wrote an essay about like hyperpop and Grimes and I do think that there is like a palpable sort of like in the whole like hyper pop milieu like of like older millennials and now like Gen Z like younger Gen Z artists like there's like a difference in sound and there's something like a bit more like chaotic and even like more like glitchy and like maximalist with Uranus and Neptune and Aquarius like it's even more like digital. So hyperpop is itself, but anyway, so that's like something interesting. Like there's maybe more analog instruments in the older millennial sounds. Like I'm thinking of like Grimes and like Arca and Arca's music is really crazy. But anyway, maybe we can talk about that later. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a connection with like Neptune and the arts and music and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I always do in the beginning, which is interesting with the outer planets, because right, we both don't really associate dignities with them.
Yeah.
But in a lot of modern astrology, people associate Neptune with Pisces, or Neptune being the ruler of Pisces, or saying Neptune is a co-ruler of Pisces next to Jupiter. And I think it's really worth kind of exploring. that, I mean, it's almost like a retrospective because we're just coming off of Neptune being in Pisces for 14 years. But yeah, that like connection. I mean, I certainly get why it would be there, like Neptune, like when we think of Neptune, we think of the ocean and the sea. But it's interesting how Pisces got associated with it and not necessarily Cancer, which almost goes into the next point of Dignities, which people say that Neptune would be exalted in the sign of Cancer and, well, fallen in the sign of Capricorn.
Yeah. Yeah, I started learning astrology like many people just online, like
Yeah.
independently, and at the metaphysical section at Barnes and Noble and so like I first learned about th Neptune as ruling Pisces. And so
Yeah.
like as I grew to understand, astrology in the modern, like, I guess, school of astrology, like I was always tying them together. And like, even though in the actual traditional setup, of Hellenistic astrology that I think does seem to be derived from the Thema Mundi, which has this very particular arrangement of the planets, with Cancer rising and you when you're familiar with that, it does seem like that this attribution of rulership, it seems more to be a kind of creative development, rather than something that is just sort of there in like a kind of scientific sense. Like,
Mm.
but it makes a lot of sense because like Neptune is the last sign of the 12, and has this kind of association with like completion and like the struggle of like self-transcendence and like Venus being exalted there and Neptune being about like the dissolution of boundaries and cosmic unity and like it makes sense and I think I wouldn't discourage people from making that association. Um and then, yeah, I think that when with astrology, there's like this poetic sensibility that's really key to it. And so to just sort of dismiss these associations that have been made, like with Neptune being the idea of Neptune being exalted in Cancer, like the way that Hellenistic astrologers describe the significance of having Cancer on the ascendant and Jupiter exalted there, like, there's like we can find all these
Mhm.
kind of archetypal connections, Jupiter being the ruler of Pisces. But the one that I find, we were talking before we started this, and maybe it's because I have Neptune there, I don't know, but I'm like, Neptune fallen in Capricorn, like, why? Like, especially if like we're familiar with the older conception of Capricorn before the outer planets were discovered, that, there was like a more mystical Saturn, right? Like Adam Ellen Boss talks a lot about this, and Capricorn has this kind of like mystical, sort of transcendent, sea goat character to it as well. So anyway, those are some initial thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. I also I don't vibe fully with the fact that Neptune is fallen in Capricorn. At least that's not how I'm experiencing it. I think, as you pointed out before, a lot of it comes from like the traditional associations. And again, we can literally see the other dignities like Jupiter being exalted in Cancer and fallen in Capricorn. I think it is pulling from that. It's not the same with all of the outer planets, but I can see that it's probably kind of pulling from that. And one thing about Capricorn as a sign as well is that it is kind of quite grounded and realistic, right? Like that's the reason why Saturn and Mars are doing extremely well in that sign of Capricorn because like in the harshest of the harsh winter, you gotta have your head
Yeah.
clear. You gotta focus on surviving. And Neptune, I don't think Neptune like really lends itself to that. Neither does Jupiter, right? So
Hmm.
I can see the thought process there. But I think Neptune, whatever it touches, it kind of distorts it. And so I think even in Capricorn, and I think that's what we can see with a lot of people generation wise that have Neptune in the sign of Capricorn, is actually that these people started to really question why. are we following this script around like having to work a 9 to 5 job and get a house and have kids at a certain age? Like, I think that was like the generation that was like, why are we doing this? So
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what Neptune did in the sign of Capricorn. And well, is it a bad thing? Is that a good thing? It depends with astrology, right? But I can see the thought process of why it would be like fall in there and do extremely well in Cancer. Both Pisces and Cancer and Scorpio is just like in the back as a water sign. But both of them like have the benefic planets like extremely in a well-positioned sphere in both of them. So there is a commonality here. And it's also water, right? Water in like a cardinal sign and a mutable sign versus a fixed sign, which would be Scorpio, is completely different
Yeah. Yeah.
feel to all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, you're just bringing up like kind of, referencing the millennial generation there like with the and there's some book written about generational patterns and they weren't working with astrology, but there's like always a generation like in the pattern that comes to sort of like rebirth society, and this time around it's the millennial generation. And it's really interesting because in Rick's book, Richard Tarnas's book, he talks about the Uranus Neptune cycle corresponding with like sort of like awakenings of like new religious utopian
Mm,
visions. And yeah, like one thing that does mark the millennial generation that we've been like criticized for is like this kind of self-indulgent like you know, a desire to like have a life that is meaningful, self-indulgent, can be self-indulgent, is
yeah.
described often as self-indulgent. And, like we grew up with all these Disney movies and, like, but, and yeah, whereas like generation before and generation after, we're like, we're just gonna like do what we need to do to like get money and have a comfortable life. Like, I'm generalizing, obviously, um, but that's just, interesting. It's like also like the dissolution of, societal structures that are sometimes associated with Capricorn, and maybe for like a new vision of something more ideal. But yeah, maybe not a lot of millennials can't afford to even, buy a house. So, like, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the dream. I
The
think
dream.
Neptune is the dream. The whole speech about, I have a dream, like that is Neptune infused. Like certainly it could also be like Venus and Pisces again. I think what a lot of people realize once they like take a few steps back and go more into traditional Hellenistic astrology, they realize that a lot of things we ascribe to a sign is like with Pisces, right? It's not necessarily Neptune. It's actually just both benefic planets, aka Jupiter and Venus, being exalted and in domicile in the sign of Pisces. And like these are the things we just kind of like pushed onto Neptune, which makes me a bit sad because I think it waters down the other planets and what they're capable of. I think certainly Jupiter and both Venus can also talk about the dream and the vision. But Neptune, I think, has a lot to do with like our ideals, and again, it distorts it a bit. It's about imagination. I know Sean Niegaard has like a whole podcast about like Neptune and imagination, which I highly, highly recommend. But yeah, I think the outer planets, they all carry this wild card energy with them, where I would I would not say that any of them are necessarily good, neither are they necessarily evil, but they just kind of amplify what they touch, which can go into many different directions. And Neptune for sure is about ideals. It's also about extremes in many ways and shapes and forms. So, and that's what I kind of really want to like also
Mhm.
hammer into people listening this is yeah, like don't demonize the outer planets, but also they're not here like
Be careful.
doing all the good work as well.
Yeah. 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 I appreciate that earlier point you made about the way in which the outer planets kind of sucking up some of the meaning that used to be associated with, the like Jupiter and Saturn. Um, yeah, it diminishes what we could conceive those planets to be associated with. And discovering the Hellenistic perspective really did like augment my understanding of Jupiter. I was like, oh, like really allowing Jupiter to be the ruler of Pisces, like and not just Sagittarius, like and not just expansion, like and because I feel like that's just often like the word that we hear. Obviously it is, but it's also like ennoblement and yeah, the idealism and hope and what all the things we want, and out of life, like in a higher sense. And yeah. And yeah, lots to say about Neptune transits, or at least the one that I've especially lived through, and the good and bad of that wild card energy.
Well, actually, t tell us about it now. I feel like why not? Like you can just hammer the point back
Okay.
like that.
Well, I only have the nodes and then Mercury in mutable signs, so that was the only like hard aspect that I was receiving. And I had Neptune conjoining my Mercury in Pisces around like 2018, 2019, 2020. And it was really cooking. That's what Rick often will say. It's like when it's like tight, when it's exact. It was really cooking in like 2018. And I was just started this philosophy program and I was like reading Carl Jung's Red Book. And I had also just like come, I had just moved to San Francisco after like going out Peru and having a difficult experience in an ayahuasca retreat and I was obsessed with like digging up traumatic memories. And when I went to the Bay, I started doing more psychedelic therapy underground because I was like obsessed with like, oh, I have to dredge up this
Mm.
memory. And I got to this point where it was almost like I didn't know what was real because like I became convinced of some narrative of like something that I thought maybe had happened to me. And it just really I feel like it's the darkness of Neptune. Like it almost felt like a kind of madness. Like I didn't know. Like I didn't. It almost like yeah, reframe my own personal history. And then I got to some point where I was just like, there's no end to this like
Mm.
digging. Like where do you pinpoint the beginning of like whatever trauma you're dealing with and like and then yeah, like reading Jung's Red Book and like just feeling like after that ayahuasca, difficulty, like I was just so porous and like making myself more porous. And at some point, and it was like kind of like toward the end of that exact like that really hot period, I discovered well, I'd already known about Rudolf Steiner, but I had a kind of aversion to him. But I started to like embrace his suggestions for spiritual development just because I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop obsessing over like what happened to me and just try to focus on transforming my soul so that it is more like stable. And
Mm.
he was a Pisces with Neptune in Pisces and Mercury in Pisces, but a moon in Virgo, if that chart is correct. So just interesting. Yeah. So anyway, that's like a bit. I feel like there was a lot of beauty in that I was like in this program and having these like just like life-changing experiences learning about like mysticism and having experiences that were like connected with what I was learning and being a part of a kind of like visionary community, but also like this sort of madness period as well. Yeah.
Divine madness. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't that just sound so Neptunian?
Yes, and I'd rather just have my feet on the ground. Like have the boundary, like what about you? What about you?
Yeah, I think in general Neptune has this interesting ability where it disillusions and also it illusions at the same time as well. Like it can put on the veil just as much as it can also take off the veil. And obviously Neptune's in a sign for so long, and like if a planet is in a sign for 14 years, you forget what it even feels like without it. I think a lot of us have had these realizations last year when Neptune first dipped into Aries, and now obviously it's in Aries for good. But like seeing, like, at least for me, for the first time, I was really seeing what Neptune actually did in my fifth house, being there in Pisces since 2011, 2012. Like, that's a long time. And it's always, yeah, memory is always a skewed thing, but Neptune is even more of a skewed thing. And I think I like what you said because Neptune can really get you into that trip of just feeling like you need to excavate more. And then it just gets weird and blurry, and you don't even know what's real anymore or who
Yeah.
you're anymore. Like you almost kind of like lose yourself. And I kind of had that experience, not necessarily losing myself, but Neptune being there since in Pisces since 2011, 2012. I mean, I just started being a teenager. Like it's hard to tell how my life would have been different if Neptune would have been in a different sign in a different house, if I would have made the same choices. We don't know. We don't have to know. But it definitely impacted. I told you before, right? It was actually during that time my parents split up, and that was really like a that was when Neptune first lifted the veil, and it really thrust me into like my illusions I had about dating and romance. And well, that's the point, right? Like it made me more realistic, and at the same time, it kind of also made the opposite, where I felt like I got into this whole, Pisces savior complex. Like it almost like it delusioned me with one thing and thrust me into a whole different illusion. Like I think that's kind of what Neptune does. And yeah, I have a few more stories, but I think I'm gonna keep them for when it fits a bit better. But there is a story I have also with Neptune and romance. I think that's gonna be more poignant later on.
Cool.
Maybe, do you have anything to add to that? Because otherwise, I think it's worth talking a bit about like Neptune's discovery, Neptune's glyph, and then go into like the mythology of Neptune.
Yeah, let's jump into that. I don't have anything else to add right now.
Yeah, I had to Google before because I because I forgot I didn't write it down. But Neptune was discovered in 1846.
Hmm. Yeah. And um I'm drawing from Rick's book, but he says
Mm.
on the basis of unexplained aberrations in the observed orbit of Uranus, which is interesting because
Mm.
on the unexplained aberrations, like there's sort of like almost like you're like a ship on the ocean and something is like interfering with the current that you expected to pull the ship, like some kind of like mystery in the deep. Yeah, beyond something beyond Uranus whose gravitational influence was pulling it out of its calculated orbit. Yeah, some mystery. And yeah, they named it Neptune. I think they wanted to name it something. I guess they named it Neptune because maybe the blueness associating it with the sea.
Yeah, yeah, because they had this whole thing with Uranus, right? Where it was like, is it going to be Uranus or is it going to be Herschel?
Oh my God, or George, right? That would have been terrible. What a weird name for a
Uh,
planet. God.
Yeah, it's almost unimaginable right now, but it's also, yeah, I mean Uranus, and that like we talked about that in the Uranus episode, but Uranus really changed the game for astrology because all of a sudden it was like there's something after Saturn. And then obviously Neptune chimes in this mysterious way. Like it couldn't be more fitting. I wonder if I don't know if we can search for that, but like if there's like a chart for when Neptune was discovered, like I'm wondering where Neptune actually was at the time it was discovered, because that's one cool thing about astrology is that after you discovered something, you can go back and you can look at where a planet was during all the previous years and periods, and you can kind of observe what was happening and going on. And that's really like that's kind of what astrologers do, right? Like we go and excavate and and see if we can find and see any sort of patterns. But yeah, Neptune's discovery being this like ominous thing is certainly very fitting for what the planet does.
It was in Aquarius that
Okay.
year. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Um, yeah, one thing that Rick really emphasizes in his book is that, it was for astrology, it was like a big shift, right, to discover Uranus. But like for the whole of our cosmology, it was like, whoa, Saturn's not the limit of the solar system of the universe. Like, and then it just keeps expanding, from there. It's
Mhm.
like Neptune, Pluto, and now like so much. It's
Yeah,
yeah. So that it's like what a time to be alive. We're just constantly upending what we thought we knew about the universe.
I
Yeah.
fully agree. Is there anything else you want to say about the discovery in and of itself? I'm not sure exactly what was going on in that period globally,
Um,
not by heart right now at least. That's usually also always something that's kind of interesting. Like what was going on globally when a planet was discovered and what was happening.
yeah, I don't have the period. I had the periods like right before that and after that. Romanticism, like which I would associate with Neptune, was pretty at its height, like just before that.
Which makes sense because Neptune would have been probably in Pisces at that time.
Yeah, yeah. Or right, wouldn't it be have been in Capricorn actually if it were in Aquarius in 1846 and then the period
Oh yeah,
prior
sorry. Yeah, that
or,
would have been afterwards.
or Sagittarius.
That would have been afterwards.
But yeah, I don't have anything on the historical period right then. But I could look real quick. But one thing that I thought was interesting that Rick noted was just that, and maybe we'll get into this as well, that the actual sort of archetypal associations with the god Poseidon or Neptune in the Roman mythology, there's like not a whole lot of resonance aside from the association with like the ocean
Hmm.
and like water and the depths, and the kind of like unity of the ocean and the sort of primordial one. Yeah. But aside from that, not a whole lot of similarities there. Yeah.
I agree, yeah. Yeah, I think all the the glyphs of all the outer planets are so much more complicated than for the inner planets. But the glyph of Neptune, by no surprise, is like Poseidon's trident. Is that how you pronounce it?
Uh-huh.
Like this kind of like the sphere he's holding, right? Which makes sense. But again, I think mythologically wise, and we can get into the mythology right afterwards, is yeah, it's a bit different. It makes me feel how I felt sometimes during the whole like Deccan dance discovery, where it feels like the tarot card seems way different than like the association with the Decans. But yeah, anyhow,
Uh-huh.
did you find anything right before now or
With respect to
like the times or
no, I was just searching in Rick's book and
oh okay,
I
okay.
just tried to let's see. Um yeah, the trident, even though it's like maybe Poseidon archetypally, there's not like a lot of resonance with Neptune, the astrological Neptune. Um there's still it still feels like an appropriate symbol, like because maybe a lot of people don't even know anything about Poseidon, but the association with like the mystical ocean, like I feel
Mhm,
like it's there
mhm.
in the image of the trident. Um and let me just search real quick on the internet.
There was a German Revolution apparently in
Yeah, I'm seeing
1848.
like revolutions. Oh wait, becomes the centerpiece, a hidden planet unveiled by a mathematical genius. No. Well, I
A
guess it
hidden
was
planet.
discovered through mathematical prediction, which is interesting
Yeah.
than like through the naked eye. The rise of socialism and early labor movements. Oh, and the emergence of photography and early motion picture experiments. Yeah, well, that does definitely seem connected with Neptune.
I agree, yeah. Yeah, I don't know when the first films were made or the first camera was invented. I would not be surprised if that started maybe around that time because that was the first time people could, I mean, yes, people were drawing pictures and paintings before of people, but having like a lens and something that is also used to kind of like the story, like the way a picture is made, feels like a very Neptunian process in and of itself. And even if you capture the picture and capture the image, right, you never capture the whole story behind it. Like neither you do on a painting. Like I'm not saying paintings are better or anything, but just it really opened a new world. And now it's, I mean, I have like what 25K pictures on my phone. It's
Yeah.
so everything's so overloaded with imagery and everything. But I will say I think it definitely was very revolutionary in and of itself for the times to be able to take a picture with a camera and of course also when the iPhone in and of itself was introduced. I don't know if Neptune or definitely I'm sure Uranus was at play here as well. But that's Neptune and Uranus together, they're like here
Yeah.
to do a lot of revolutionary things together.
Yeah, yeah, that's when in his book, like maybe not necessarily right when Neptune was discovered, but one of the planetary alignments with historical events that Rick tracks is the Uranus-Neptune cycle, and he does tie it directly to innovations in like new media technologies and photography. Like photography, like the reproduction of reality through the image, and then, with the motion picture, like approximating even closer, and then the internet in the 90s was like a kind of like new chapter, like a new synodic cycle opening between them with the birth of the internet. And
Yep.
we're ever closer to virtual reality. And I was just looking at this company called Runway, which is one of the first AI companies to have a model open to the public to generate video back in 2023. And now their plan has always been to like move towards rather than like large language models using video for the creation of world modeling.
Mm,
So they're talking about bringing art and science together and like basically like testing different scientific experiments, all kinds of different possibilities, but in a way that's like even more faithful to the reproduction of reality. So like, yeah, Uranus like kind of bringing the technological and the imagination Neptune together. Yeah, so interesting. Like right now, we're having that the sextile is like growing,
hmm.
applying. Yeah, yeah,
Applying, yeah, yeah. We did get a first, even
little.
a second. I don't know, but definitely one hit we got with Uranus and Neptune last year.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be even more poignant. I mean, even and obviously Pluto is like chiming in there too. Like there's a
Yeah,
whole like
that whole
sextiles
thing.
and trines, and that is I know everyone is like super scared of this year, but I actually really like this combination of all of them because for me it means that whatever we were afraid of is we just haven't found the right questions to ask it. And that's probably very Uranus going into Gemini. It's like you just need to ask the right question to open the portal. And then it's gonna be a lot less scary. And I do think that's also like Neptune and Uranus together. Yeah, and obviously now Neptune being in Aries, I think what we're all feeling, we also talked about this before, it's like people are so sick and tired of like people actually want the real thing, the raw thing.
Yeah.
People want to go out and do things. They don't want to like get lost in fantasies. It's a nice world, but then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, but what do I do with this?
What's real? Yeah.
What's real? What is actually real? What stands the test of time? Saturn is there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to be so overly perfectionist about like my writing, like, just going through academia and like I use
Mm,
Substack and I would like just not, I would be reluctant to post things unless they were like absolutely perfect. But now that I read this like superficially perfect writing that everyone is using either, ChatGPT to like edit, I'm so sick of it that now I'm like, I don't even care if I have some like errors. Like I'll go back and fix
I know,
them. And
right?
yeah, like I'll just like let some of my sentences be awkward because at least there's like a soul, behind them. And like, yeah, so that's like an interesting development. I feel like it's showing us like what is human about us and like a different conception of excellence, maybe. It's like a more human, like living, breathing excellence. Maybe there's like something of Aries like in that. Like I was,
Mm, mm,
Aries like for the Greeks, arete was this notion of like, it's where the word aristocratic comes from. And it was all about like excellence, like
mm.
being like the actualizing our fullest potential. And yeah, I think of Aries, as deriving from that, like the best of Aries.
Agree. Yeah. I talked about my mom before. I think they're so like we associate aristocracy and like with like elites, and that is like usually people have a bad connotations when they hear
Yeah.
these words, but it's actually like finesse, like r refined taste in things. So I actually really like that you brought this up. And I think the comparison I can make with not specifically that, but Neptune, like observing Neptune in Pisces. I think when Neptune first entered into Pisces, that was when a lot of social media started to like really peak. And
Hmm.
and at that time, that was amazing. I mean, like I loved spending my time on Tumblr as a Tumblr girly and creating, not even knowingly, but creating my like vision boards and everything with
Just
through
yeah.
imagery, right? And it was such a fun place to build new worlds. Like that was what the internet was for, and it was amazing and exciting. And then all of a sudden, sometime in that journey, it like did the opposite thing. And it wasn't like us going to the internet anymore. It was us trying to go away from the internet because we became the internet. Like even now,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine like not being like when was the last time anybody like actually logged off of Instagram? Like nobody does that. We're
Yeah,
so like
constantly checking,
ugh.
checking, checking. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. It's like it grew like Neptune, like it grew the limb, like the internet became a limb inside of us. It became us. And so obviously now with Neptune moving into Aries, there is an incentive to go more offline again, and being offline is the new cool, which I'm not surprised. But I think that just brings the point into like how Neptune can do both things. Like how it like takes away an illusion and kind of like lets you go into another one.
Yeah, yeah, like what's the dream right now? And yeah, that's a great observation. Like, you know, the internet was there, social media was there, but really, yeah, like 2011 onward, like maybe that's we could say when everyday life became increasingly like uh there's not really an option not to like have a smartphone. There's not really an
Mm,
option not to be on social media. Like it just totally started to pervade life and in a way that, yeah, like didn't become optional. And then maybe also started to become even more exploited by, you know, different corporations. And maybe that's also why we're much more immersed in it. And I think of like Pisces, like as, this period in the light cycle where the light is almost, when it gets to Aries, when it crosses over the equinox, the light prevails over the darkness. But one of the sort of stories of Pisces is the struggle out of the darkness,
yeah.
and with all our like vices and I feel like that's something that the period of Neptune moving into Pisces has really like made us aware of as a culture is like these devices really exploit our addictive tendencies and just the parts of our the psyches and our brains that yeah, where we become our own self-undoing. And so maybe, yeah, like one thing I've been like enjoying thinking about is like Neptune moving into Aries is like this, because also during the Pisces period, there was, and I think to some extent warranted like critique of the hero like
Mm,
archetype and like, oh, like Joseph Campbell, like, that's like just such a patriarchal idea. but maybe Neptune moving into Aries, like I was talking to someone else about like in the last few years, I feel like there's been a lot of um nostalgic like kind of Tumblr-esque like a celebration of knights with swords or just like swords, like this kind of like archaic imagery. And so something maybe Neptune moving into Aries, like a renewal of our like love of the noble hero and like our own
Mm,
kind of like heroism in developing a more autonomous relationship or individuated relationship or just having some kind of like discipline with our, devices that connect us to the internet. And like, I was thinking also when you were talking about social media and the internet, like the internet being so Neptunian and Uranian, but like just this thing that connects us, but also connects us to a bunch of illusions and
yeah.
yeah, addictions and yeah,
Social media is not real life.
yeah.
Not real
Or
life.
I don't know. I mean, increasingly it produces life in its image. So it's like, was it Marshall McLuhan that said like what is that? Whoever says no, maybe it wasn't him, but life imitates art or
Mm,
art imitates life and then life imitates art and it's like this sort of and
yeah.
then our machines remake us in their image and yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think it's because what I've been noticing a bit now, and I'm sure it's going to get even more relevant, especially also with like the nodes shifting to Leo and Aquarius. And Jupiter this year also going into Leo, but that's we're not talking about Neptune right now. But there's like an urge to be more authentic, right? And people, but it's like how much of authenticism can also be fabricated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think that is a big question that Neptune and Aries is kind of posing towards us. Because again, if you're smart, you can fabricate authenticity and feeling relatable. That's what a lot of, you know, pop stars, idols are doing.
Advertising.
There's amazingly well how they can seem like they're here and you can just touch them, but still worlds apart, And that is also very Neptunian in and of itself. And I certainly, yeah, I think there's a big romanticization of like the medieval times that is
Yeah.
currently in the field. Like, definitely also for me in my life, I'm constantly feeling like I just want to dress as a medieval princess. So, like,
You should. Yeah.
I'm like, bring back people walking around with swords and in armor.
Yeah, put those guns away. Yeah. Meanwhile, like AI collaborating with the Department of War and like killer robots on the horizon.
Oh,
It's like
yeah, that is
crazy.
there as well, for sure.
Yeah,
I
it's like
agree.
Uranus and Pluto trine. Yeah.
I certainly think that Neptune, well, in a Mars ruled sign, has this.
Yeah.
I think it has this like kamikaze type of vibe where it
Yes.
can just like very much idealize like dying in war for a higher cause and a greater cause. Like that's very Neptune in a Mars ruled
Yes.
sign.
That is so astute. That is a great way to frame it. The kamikaze complex. Yeah.
That's gonna be a Substack article one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and just I'm sure, like I hope it doesn't happen, but like, some astrologers have been anticipating larger armed conflicts and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
that's probably
always this,
something
yeah.
to watch
Like
out for is the intoxication with like that kind of story. What were you gonna say?
like just that as an astrologers, I think we never want to like sit here and be like, oh, war is ha like
Yeah.
it's never. I hate to be like to even have to think that this is an archetype that will be more prevalent. Like I would love that it's not,
Yeah.
but I can also see that it is. I don't know, for whatever reason necessary. And it's also always this thing where it feels like, why is it always the negative side that has to be manifested? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
why is it never seemingly the good side? You know, why can't we all just walk around in armors and being knights and princesses? Why do we
Yeah.
actually
Just
have to go to
cosplay.
war?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, one time I was listening to Grimes like talk about something and she was like, we could just like virtually fight, you know? Like
I know.
like why can't we just do it virtually? You know, I was like, yeah, why not? You know? Like why can't we just all embrace that this is divine play? But yeah, no, that's like a good point. I also like sometimes I get kind of annoyed with astrologers who are like just banging the war drums like 'cause you know, like it can be it's like it's triggering for people and it you know it gets attention and this uh uh Jeffrey Cornelius, he's the late astrologer. He wrote this great book called The Moment of Astrology. It's like philosophy of astrology, and he writes about how Pico di Mirandola, who was like you know one of the Renaissance guys, he had this kind of scathing critique of astrology, and it wasn't really a bad like thing. Like he's sort of like fighting in a way like Ficino, who was an astrologer, was his mentor. He was sort of advocating for humanistic astrology in the sense that like the human is a creative like free agent, like we're not just doomed to like compulsively enact fate. And these astrologers were like really upset at him and like for like prophesied his death at an early age, and he ended up dying. And Jeffrey Cornelius was like, in a way, these astrologers were like doing black magic, like by just saying that. Because like even if you kind of see it, like maybe you shouldn't say it, and maybe you shouldn't say it because maybe the universe is open and the future
Mm.
is not determined, and like so it's a kind of hubris to like make pronouncements like these because in a way they start priming the imagination of those who hear it, and like in an age where we have so much we have a potential to reach a lot of people, we should be cautious about what we say, right? Because yeah, there's also this creative element of astrology where we're influencing others and ourselves with the images that we bring.
I fully agree. I fully agree. That's what again makes the internet so fascinating because like the
It's like
algorithmic
magic.
feeds are spells in and of itself where it's like whatever you're feeding the machine or well what it's feeding to you I guess is like a bubble you can kind of be in and it can be a good thing, it can also be a bad thing. I mean, I'm certainly not of the incentive of that we should just stay in a bubble, you know, it's very
Yeah.
easy to just be in your bubble and forget that there's other things happening outside in the world. And there's always something about like facing the darkness and looking it straight into the eye that's there. And at the same time, I also think that it's very easy for like propaganda to be spread that way when it's just always there, when it's always there. And I think Neptune actually kind of shows us just how easy it is to create or break realities and like what you believe in and what like what character you play in this whole grand play of life. So yeah, yeah, and again, Neptune and imagination is key here. And imagination, there's who said that? Was it like Carl Sagan or something? About or was it I don't know who said the goddamn quotes, okay? But basically, I think it was Einstein of like logic can take you from A to B, but imagination can take you anywhere. It can create worlds. You can go somewhere where you haven't gone. Like it starts with that image. Like before things get created, it starts with an image. It starts with an ideal. And you can find that through. I mean, currently right now, if we're talking about the times with you know, I'm just thinking of the Dracula movie that came out and it's been like over everyone's feet. But like the idealized version of what love and what romance and what yearning is like it starts with that, with seeing that, letting it touch you, and then what are you going to do about it? How can you create that in real life so it doesn't stay something that is just like a weird association in that
Yeah.
Neptunian realm?
Yeah. Dracula?
Yeah, like Dracula Love Tale.
Oh, I have not heard of it somehow. I'll have to
Oh,
watch
your
that.
algorithm is gonna pick it up. Well, actually, I will say it came out in Europe last year. I didn't
Oh,
even know. But then in America, it had its release date. Yeah, I think the same thing as Wuthering Heights, which I'm like, it's so interesting. Like basically piling them as a like almost opposite ends. But I think both did almost the same thing where it made people really question what is their idealized version of romance and what isn't.
yeah. Oh man, with Charlie XCX, right? Wuthering Heights.
Wuthering Heights, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, I have to see that.
Dracula different, but I really yeah, it has been over my Instagram all the time. So,
I'll have to check it out.
okay, everyone, we're back from a little break. We are gonna get into the hopefully more concisive realm of Neptune. We're gonna talk about um we're gonna
My
talk
bug.
about exactly, I love it. We're gonna talk about just like Neptune cycles and Neptune transits, essentially Neptune retrogrades, everything that has to do with Neptune's movement up in the sky. And let's just first start up with a very basic observation is that a full Neptune cycle takes around 165 years to come back to its natal place. So none of us alive, unless they engineer something in the next coming years, are gonna get a Neptune return. Like with Uranus, we're still in the realm of people kind of like usually being able to hit their Uranus return because that you get that around 80 years old. Like considering the lifespan, that's something very realistic. With Neptune, we're not there. We're not there. I don't know if we want to be there. I don't know. I don't know if we
Yeah.
want to live 165 years, but I think yeah, it's an interesting observation considering like Neptune being so elusive, and then it's like, well, yeah, none of us is gonna get a Neptune return cycle. I mean, we're maybe gonna get like a Neptune opposition, but there's many Neptune transits we're never gonna experience. Like, I don't think neither of both of us are gonna experience what like Neptune and Scorpio is like. So, so I
Yeah.
do think that's interesting considering the fact that everybody that has planets in Aries, like that's a once in a lifetime experience that Neptune is gonna conjunct, I don't know, someone's Venus or Mercury or whatever. So that's why Neptune transits, I think, and also Pluto transits are quite significant because they're really this like once in a lifetime thing that you're getting in your chart, and there's no like repetition. It's not like Venus that you we experience like basically every
Yeah.
every year in like the same signs. So yeah, a big, very big cycle.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, I think, because even just our ability to speak about a Neptune cycle, well, obviously the ancients like had tracking systems for the eclipses and the Great Conjunction and things like that. But I think it's just interesting to think of to consider like I guess what that means for us as a species that we have this like capacity to like reflect like way back in time now and we're just like starting to like maybe formulate what it even means for Neptune, which has only been discovered in the last 200 years to complete a full cycle. Like what does that even mean? We're just sort of starting to be able to learn about that through the access to history that we have, and yeah, being able to like track Neptune's movement through the signs, and also to think about ourselves, kind of connecting back to what we were talking about earlier, like in terms of generations. I feel like that's sort of something that has coincided with the emergence of outer planet astrology. Like, I don't know that there's ever been a time in history where there's been as much of a group consciousness for generations.
Mm,
And I think that's partially also the internet, right? Like, because it's like across national borders, like that we
yeah,
talk about these generations. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to mention in connection with this.
agree. Yeah, yeah, a lot of people right now are actually gonna experience their Neptune to natal Neptune sextile. Everybody that has Neptune in Aquarius is is going to
Yeah.
experience a natal Neptune to Neptune sextile. We've experienced it with Neptune and Pisces, would have been sextile to Capricorn. So that is like a transit that you get. Yeah, mid to end 20s, something like that. And then most of us also are going to experience a Neptune square and a Neptune trine, and again, opposition if you make it to old age. Um, and I think these Neptune to natal Neptune transits, also you get to experience your own natal Neptune in a way. But I do think a lot of these planets, because they're so generational, is it's not affecting just you. It's affecting all the people right now that have Neptune at 0 to 3 degrees of Aquarius are getting a Neptune sextile right now. So unless it's a personal planet that is also involved, it's really a large group of people that is being affected. But I do think with that, it actually, again, we can talk so much about the generations because for me, that is like, okay, there is something happening with most of Gen Z, early Gen Z at least, that their times are coming right now. Like I think with the Neptune to Neptune sextile, with the Pluto to Pluto sextile as well, right? Like Pluto in Aquarius is sextiling everyone's Pluto in Sagittarius, which is not just Gen Z, that's also a lot of millennials. Um, and also Uranus. Everybody that has Uranus in Aquarius is getting a natal Uranus trine. And I'm like, that is like that
Boost.
generation is getting activated right now. There's something happening. So I think from that standpoint of view, it's very interesting to observe how it's affecting like a larger group of people. Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be worth like paying attention to like social media self-reflection about the generations. Like, because I see it a lot on TikTok, like people like I saw somebody from Gen Z reflecting on like how everybody used to like talk shit about millennials, and now there's like a different story that people are telling where like actually, I wish I had that kind of like dreaming vision or yeah, or just like whatever generation it is, like millennials talking to millennials or Gen X talking about Gen Z. Yeah, it's interesting, like to look to the way in which look at the narratives that are being told at any given time to get a sense for like these Neptune aspects in the longer cycle.
Yes. And again, I think it's so what we can observe, we talked about this a bit in the beginning. There's always like a ideal or kind of like a dream that is depending on
Yeah.
where you have your Neptune. Like these people usually, again, it always depends with astrology and the natal chart, but usually could say like as a generation, they have this in common. And a lot of people that have Neptune and Aquarius, I mean, it's like early Gen Z that is very much known for being the people that, are all about non-gender conformity and like not really identifying with things, not labeling things. And that's very Aquarian in and of itself, right? So I think we can kind of, or like the idea, like the ideal of an outlook of a certain sign. Again, it can always go into extremes, always. That's
Yeah.
always the downside of Neptune.
Either direction. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But that is, I think we can observe that with the generations here as well. So yeah, I'm curious what will happen now with all these transits affect. I mean, it's certainly also affecting the older generations as well. I mean,
Uh-huh.
with like the
Yeah, we're just kind of talking about millennials and Gen Z, but
yeah, yeah, because
that's just
that's
obviously because we are.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. But the older generations are also getting interesting transits. I'm thinking of, the Pluto and Leo generation that is getting a Pluto opposition. Like that is very fascinating to me, considering the fact that these are people that are and this is like the boomer generation, if I'm not mistaken, and they're basically like all kind of
Yeah.
retiring now in the coming years. So there is a new like power restructuring that is going on. And I wonder how that'll look like globally with yeah, younger people coming into these like leadership positions.
Yeah. Exciting.
Exciting and terrifying.
Yeah, because I feel like with Gen X and then millennials, like it's just gonna be different. Like it's gonna be obviously it's gonna be different. It's like goes without saying, but um yeah, people who were born after the 60s, like not just like lived through it, but like were born after it,
Yeah.
after those like cultural shifts like started to really cement themselves and yeah, in the collective. So from there we go to talking about the different aspects, or we want to talk about to natal planets, transits to natal planets. What do you think?
Yeah, we can talk about transits to natal planets because I've already
Yeah, yeah,
kind of said a few things about that. Because again, it's going to be this is impacting generations,
yeah,
like Neptune to natal Neptune transits, but personal planets, that is happening or not happening. Like again,
yeah.
it's like I'll never know what it feels like to have Neptune transiting Scorpio going over my sun. Like that is not gonna be my life experience. Like I'll probably and it feels so foreign saying that, but I'll probably experience Neptune and Taurus opposing my sun. But yeah, but again, everybody that has any planets in Aries right now, which I think you can talk about more. Although I will say I have natal Saturn there right now too, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that is a once in a lifetime experience. Like I know a friend of mine just her moon at 0 degrees of Aries. I'm like, that is crazy that you got that conjunction like right on your moon. 'Cause, like that's never gonna happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, one person that I thought might be interesting to talk about in connection with this is actually Grimes because she was born right after a solar eclipse in Pisces 27. I mean, if this chart is correct, which I think it probably is, like they're on Reddit, one of her friends from high school was like, "Yeah, I did her chart in high school. This is right." So who knows? Scorpio rising. Wait, and well, the chart is March 17th, 1988, 11:30 p.m. This is on Astro Theme. And anyway, I've just noticed like because I just love her music and her art, and so her son's 27 Pisces and moon is 1 degree of Aries, and like so she's had Saturn and Neptune pass over that, and there's like a lot of things I'm sure in her biography we could talk about in connection with that it's been public. But I've just noticed on social media like a shift from this sort of like experiment in performance art, shocking shocking like performance art, like like this song, We Appreciate Power, kind of like giving expression to accelerationist ideology, pledge allegiance to the world's most powerful computer simulation, it's the future. And like talking about, when she was with Elon, like being the propagandist for the Martian technocracy. And so like this is
Yeah.
sort of like the dark side of Neptune, you could say. But like going over her sun moon conjunction, like there's been like this turn where she's like talking about God and like just like or almost like a kind of return. She like grew up Catholic, like returned to, and she said some of her like visions and Halifax of these earlier albums were inspired by Hildegard von Bingen, who actually Richard Tarnas talks about in his section on Uranus Neptune. And Grimes was born with the Uranus Neptune conjunction. As being a figure during a past Uranus Neptune conjunction, but just Neptune going over these placements like potentially like lifting someone up into, especially when it comes to like the uh, the dark potentials of AI, holding out for like the good, like a vision of the good and of the beautiful. And like there's this well-known philosopher in the accelerationist space who thinks that Nick Land, who thinks that like AI is like this sort of manifestation of like this demonic energy that's just going to devour humanity. And in this article where he was at a party with a bunch of like technologists and Grimes was there, the reporter said, she said, "Can the machines be oriented towards human ends, or will AI simply eat the universe? I feel an incredible urge to make it stop and see beauty more." And so just like that shift from like this kind of, nihilistic almost like there's another song called NPC where she's like singing what is it? love, beauty, power, fame, choose your weapon to beat the game or something like that to this sort of like, yeah, this hopeful visionary shift, I feel like is kind of expressive of what it could be possible with Neptune moving over the sun and the moon. And my Venus is at 8 degrees and my sun is at 16 degrees of Aries, so there's a little bit of time before they. But what about you? Your Saturn's where?
Um, well, my Saturn's also like at 14 degrees, so it's gonna
Okay.
be
Yeah.
a bit in the future, but co-present, right?
Co-presence. Yeah, it's in that house. Yeah.
Co-present. Well, one thing I noticed now is that actually with just generally transits, like I'm experiencing Venus and Mercury in Pisces in a completely different light than when Neptune was there. Because they were always going to conjoin Neptune at some point during their journey in Pisces. And now it's like, whoa, like I can, like that is actually what Venus and Pisces feels like. That is actually what Mercury in Pisces feels like. And it's interesting because, like, Mercury is retrograde right now. But it is, I think, a whole different feel. Like Neptune just always distorts whatever it touches. And again, good and bad ways, in good and bad ways. Obviously, I think, but that's every planet that is slow moving, which is, I would say, from Saturn upwards to the outer planets, is they're so annoying when they're at these last few degrees. Like they're
Yeah.
so annoying. It's like the worst expression is coming out of them. And that's certainly what Neptune these past few years has been feeling like in Pisces.
Yeah, those anaretic degrees. Right. Yeah. Mars, Saturn ruled in the bounds as they, yeah. 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 So I guess when it comes to like the quality of the transit, like Neptune like conjoining a planet is almost like whatever that planet symbolizes in your chart, there's a kind of like fusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I feel like when Mercury went over or when it went over my Mercury, it was like my mind was like became so porous, like and like what's real, what's like madness and whereas Venus like might be this sort of long period of an almost like dream come true relationship or like a series of like projected fantasies, or I mean, it could be so many things, but yeah, but yeah, just this general signature of like the two principles like merging.
Yes, yes. I think Neptune almost has a bit of a quality like Rahu, like the North
Oh
Node,
yeah, yeah,
where
yeah,
I mean, obviously all the others amplify things, but I think Neptune really turns it up like a notch, where it like kind of really distorts the perspective of how like important something might seem all of a sudden or isn't. And again, Neptune does both things. It like lures you in and it can also lure you out at the same time. It almost feels like you're in a labyrinth and then like instead of like getting out, you just get into a new labyrinth. It's like a new quest you
yeah.
go through. So well, one transit I can actually talk about right now is that was back in around like 2021. At least that's when it was the most exact, is when Neptune started to trine my sun and ascendant in Scorpio. And that was also the year where like or was it 2022? I don't know, but it was the year where Jupiter was also in Pisces.
Oh,
And
oh yeah.
things started sooner and that there was like a conjunction between
Hmm.
Jupiter and Neptune and it was like exactly trining my sun, okay?
Wow, wow,
So
wow.
crazy times, but I'll tell you a bit of a story because I think it can run this whole point across of how Neptune transits can feel like. But basically, one thing, it started way sooner, but that was just the pinnacle of it. But essentially, I kind of fell in love with someone, but that is the point where it switched to it being like full on limerence. And I didn't know at that time like, I didn't even have a word for it. Luckily, now I know what that is. But that is the realm of Neptune. Okay, limerence is the
Yes.
realm of
Yeah.
Neptune where it distorts your idea of a fantasy. You're not even relating to the person anymore. You're relating to what you think they symbolize into your life, or whatever you think they're like your salvation or the potential, or whatever you think you're going to get out of that, which is just not rooted in reality. Like that is Neptune, that is limerence. And for me, that was like the pinnacle of that, which makes sense, right? It was happening in my fifth house, the fifth house having all to do with like dating and romance and the idea of love. And so not only that, but the other thing that was happening at that time is that like I was aware that this is unhealthy. Like I was enough aware at that point, like I was enough self-reflective. But I was like, okay, well, what can I like do to like salvage that? Like get me out of that in whatever way. So one thing that happened is in one hand, I started very much going down the road of like being a bhakti practitioner. So like
Mm.
devoting myself to God. I'm like, this love has to go somewhere. Like if it can't go to the person, it has to go somewhere. So I was basically treating God as my divine beloved. I mean, I still do. I still do. Like everything you can be in relationship with. So that was one thing. On the other hand, another thing that was also happening because that was not happening in my life is that I went down the road of and that's just generally Neptune in the fifth house, I would say. I never really struggled with like drugs and stuff, but escapism 100%. Like I
Oh.
was watching anime till like late in the morning. I loved being in these worlds. And then in 2020, I realized that was very toxic. But what ended up happening is I switched from anime to K-pop, which is just another set of evil. But I was like, okay, it's at least it's real people. Like I can relate to real people. But like no joke, it was actually very important for me because it was like very relevant to connect in that way to this people because I couldn't get the connections that I wanted to in real life. So I know it's over screen. I know it's over screen, but it did something that something in real life couldn't. And so I guess my point that I'm trying to bring across is that like this is Neptune. It gets you from one labyrinth into the next labyrinth. Like it didn't salvage the actual thing. It did the same thing but in a different route that made it more like it's like okay, limerence, I can't be with that person. I can relate more to the K-pop idols. I can watch their thing. So it feels more tangible, even though it really isn't. Like it still isn't real life. Okay, can I relate to God? Okay, sure. It's more real life. It still isn't fully real life. So that's just like Neptune. It just kind of like takes you from one door to the next door. That is a big mystery. Yeah, luckily I'm like fully out of all of that right now, by the way, just in case anyone's wondering. But that was really when Neptune was directly trining my sun in ascendant. It was when it was the most present in my life. And on that day where that actually happened, I was working at a shop and I knew that it was happening. And that's the point where I think you mentioned something in the beginning. Like, what if it happened if I didn't even know the transit existed? But I was like so overly focused on that transit that I legit thought that I was like dissolving or something. And I had like one of the worst panic attacks ever in my
Oh
life
God.
through
Yeah.
that. Which in turn actually made me live more in reality though, because I realized like, oh, I need to talk about the things that are going on inside of me. So, oh, Neptune is such a wild card, I swear. Like it's such a bitch, honestly, like for lack of better words.
Yeah, yeah, and when as you were sharing, it was making me think of what I was actually learning about when Mercury or when Neptune was on my Mercury. Like I was reading James Hillman and his revisioning psychology and just his emphasis on like the need of our souls for fantasy and
Hmm.
for like the dream and like and pathology as a kind of something that arises when our life of fantasy doesn't have like an outlet. And so there's like healthy forms of escapism or dreaming or like mythology,
Yeah.
like, and so like the K-pop, like, that's kind of like a dream. Like there's something, like that's sort of participating in a fictional reality, and like it doesn't escapism, yeah, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing. And also, I was also learning. I read the Symposium, Plato's Symposium, and it's about love. They all give a speech to the god Eros, and basically, they end up painting this picture of like romantic love as a participation in divine love. And as long as we recognize that romantic love, is with another human being who is finite and isn't like going to like complete us, but we'll only find our completion in fully in the divine, and we're already complete.
Mm,
Then we won't, we maybe won't fall into. I mean, maybe limerence is just kind of part of falling in love, like, but you can sort of get to the other side where your love of the other is like also a participation in divine love, and so I was also kind of like discovering this way of thinking about love, and I feel like it's been really healing for me. And so I feel like that's kind of a potential of Neptune, maybe in any of its transits, like is to like break through to that kind of bhakti, because that's sort of what Rick emphasizes, like in his mythic associations of Neptune, is like really that Christ, cosmic consciousness,
mm.
divine love, unifying, like back to the womb. But no, but we're post womb, so like, yeah, yeah. Anyway, that I was just thinking of that. Beautiful, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's that. And again, as you said, it's something that is it's not, it is part of reality, but it's not the full reality. And it's not something that is meant to be all the
yeah,
time. Like we're gonna get back to that love once we pass, once we're at the gates of between death and
heaven,
life. But
yeah,
the point here in this earthly realm is not to be constantly in that. I mean, God, that we would not even be able to live life. Like
yeah,
imagine being in that state and trying to like do a mathematical test or something. That's probably not going to work. But it's something that can happen. And again, it's like it's an exploration, right? What I'm thinking again of Dracula the movie. That is just there's this scene where he sees her again after waiting for her for 400 years. And I'm like, that is that Neptunian moment.
what of that longing? Yeah,
Exactly, that longing, that
yeah,
yearning. But that is an experience in that moment. That they're not, he's not going to feel that every single day when they're together. Neither is she going to feel that
yeah,
every single day when they're together. But it's experiences. It's experiences. And one thing that certainly helped me, and I think helps a lot of astrologers, is when you can like detach in a healthy way where you realize this is the archetypal experience that is present right now in my life. Like that 100% helped me with limerence. Even though, again, I think with Neptune especially, it's you don't fully see it once you're in it, right? Like
yeah,
it's just like
yeah.
have a
Like,
veil
yeah, I
on
know
it.
the astrology, but still in it. Yeah,
Exactly. Hindsight is 2020. And so looking back now, I was like, okay, like this was the archetype that was coming into my life, and I was meant to experience that in some sort of way. And again, with Neptune, I truly believe there is, for lack of better words, but like a higher purpose in that fact that we aren't getting all Neptune transits in our lifetimes, but the ones that we do, they are somehow like written in this grand, if we chose it before we came to Earth or whatever, but fateful way that we are meant to go through this. I truly believe that.
yeah, yeah. Because they end up becoming life defining. Yeah. Yeah, definitely Pluto as well. That's it's a different ballgame. Yeah.
That's a different different energy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there any other I don't know, transits that you maybe want to talk about, or should we talk? I mean, the next point we're going to talk about is Neptune retrogrades, even though they're yeah.
Well, I could just say a bit. I mean, I don't have experience with the transits of this, but just because I have them natally, I feel like maybe something
Mm,
of that experience could convey, yeah, something about. the transit of the hard aspects, Neptune hard aspects, like um well, yeah, I think I have it square my sun and then opposing my Mars in the seventh house. And those periods maybe for people experiencing transiting Neptune to, certain parts of the chart that especially symbolize the self or relationship with others, like a difficulty of negotiating like boundaries, like and like, maybe being too having too much of a tendency to like take on the projections of others at times, and not really knowing who you are because you're always adapting to the context, or yeah, I feel like and maybe events coming to pass that just seem to come out of nowhere but reflect uh situations like that. Maybe with the square, it's kind of like a blindsiding situation. But then, yeah, especially with the opposition, like the gulf between like the real and the ideal, or the victim and savior, or just any
Mhm.
kind of archetypal, is sort of like, yeah, mythic scenario where there's some kind of salvation in another place, or you are yourself for the savior, like in the danger of ego inflation. Those are some things that maybe could arise through the hard aspects.
Yes. Yeah. So this just came into my mind right now. We didn't write it down, but like in synastry, like when you have any sort of natal, like I don't know, I just see it so often with like Venus Neptune synastry, where it's so easy to idealize a person or be the person that is being idealized, but just not really seeing the person fully clearly for what they are. And that can sometimes be a very big challenge if you have that type of synastry with someone. It doesn't just have to be with Venus, even though that is just one big indicator because Venus generally rules over our romantic love relationships, but it can also be in friendships.
Hmm.
Um, it's something that also happens. I don't have a specific chart example right now, but I know that a lot of people that have Neptune on, well, I guess you can, but like Neptune nearby the ascendant, there can often be this. We can see that a lot, or Neptune on the MC actually, with a lot of people that rose to fame, because that is kind of what it means to be an idol, right? Like people are projecting so much on you.
The
Um,
glamour. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. They're projecting, but you can also, the people usually are comfortable in some sort of way of giving off that image because it is an image, right? It's not your full true self that you are when you are a famous person out in public or an idol. Like it's always a projected image kind of, and people will make up their minds however they want about you. Obviously, this can happen on smaller scales. Not everybody that has Neptune on the Womb ascendant is going to be a super
Yeah.
famous person, but it's a
Yeah.
pattern.
Yeah, I think like the role of the actor, is a
Mhm.
Neptunian one, like being able to like slip in and out of different personas and to like work with your familiarity with people's projections and like play with that, and yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think again is a lot of social media, right? It's like how do you
Yeah.
curate your feed? It's an image that you're projecting and the one that you maybe want people to see. It's not your full entire self. It's one part of you. And I'm not saying it's an unreal part of you, but it's also not ever the whole story. And that, yeah, that's the play of Neptune. And like, how can I curate a specific image so I'm seen in that specific light that I want to be seen and witnessed in. Which, at the end we don't have full control. People will always think
Yeah.
whatever they want, but it's that is the realm of Neptune.
Yeah, and also like another important thing to like emphasize is like the difference between that image and you, like
Hmm.
and maybe one of the dangers is if with Neptune is like the temptation to identify. Like actually one of the myths that Rick associates with Neptune is the myth of Narcissus, staring into his own reflection, or Narcissus. as they said in Greece, in Greek. Yeah. So so having a kind of ironic distance from the avatar is probably good. And I think, one thing that's interesting in the last, like just since like people growing up with video games have started to come of age, like the jargon or the lingo, or just like the manner of speaking, like main character energy, or that person's an NPC, or like just this way of like kind of like looking at ourselves as if we are like an avatar, like from a transcendent perspective, like we're inhabiting this persona, but we're more than that. Like that also seems like an interesting development, connected with Neptune.
Yeah, yeah, I immediately thought about that. That is, yeah, the fact that this language even exists
Yeah,
is very Neptunian in and of itself. And at the same time, I think it kind of also is true because in a way you can really wake up every day and decide what character you want to play. Um, it's kind of also a quite fun thing to do. Like dress up entirely differently, like go to a party, tell them in a completely different name, just see what's gonna happen, I think that is like the fun part of Neptune, where you can be like, yeah, all of this is kind of an illusion, and I can be whoever the fuck I want to be at the same
play.
time. So yeah, that's certainly the fun part of Neptune, when you realize like the world is your stage and you can kind of be whoever you want to be, or go towards that, like act towards that, because that's the part of imagination again, right? That's one of the uh, gosh, I mean, manifesting is so overused, and there's many, it's so
Yeah,
I almost like don't even want to use that word
I
anymore,
know.
but
Yeah,
but like one of the things that a component when it comes to manifesting is being able to imagine it first. Because if you cannot imagine it, even in your mind, like how the heck is this gonna come into your reality? Like it almost can't, because you can't imagine that it can possibly exist. So that is Neptune as well.
yeah, and there's like real science showing that like athletes, imagining themselves succeeding at their future sporting event, like actually uh, does make a difference, like or like imagination and healing. And so anyway, there's a Saturn dimension to all this as well. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah, it
for
can become
sure.
real.
Yeah, yeah, I think we're all just like tired of the like
Yes, no, I
over
agree.
spiritualization of Neptune and Pisces with
The
that,
law of
but
attraction. Yeah.
exactly
But
like
it
the
is it is real, but we're also limited finite beings. So like we don't
yeah.
have like we're not God. So like I think that's just what the manifestation world needs is a little dose of that, you know.
Yes, and I think uh, real manifestation, if I can put it that way, always involves a trust and surrender to knowing that you are not in charge, like
Yeah.
trusting that there is a higher realm, being, God, however you want to call it, that actually knows better. At the end of the day, because whatever you think might be useful for your life, maybe that actually isn't.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
has always been part of my prayers in some sort of way, where I'm like, okay, like this is kind of what I want. I would like that. But I also trust that you know what's best for me. And if, if this is not meant to show up in my life, make me okay with like
Yeah.
leaving that
Help
desire
me.
alone, or like, I think that is a big part that people have kind of missed in the realm of manifestation, where it just became this like thing of yeah, like the toxic side of Pisces, I would say, where it's just about like, oh yeah, you're the creator of your own world, and it doesn't matter if things happen at the expense of others and whatnot. Like, go be that main character, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you're just suffering like out of your own will. Like, like you don't have to be in pain. Like it's like actually pain and suffering is part of the cosmos too.
Yeah. And if you want to learn that, go buy my $777 course
Oh
to
my
tell you
God, yeah.
how you can
77
get out of
cents.
that. Exactly. I'm so glad we're getting out of that era right
Yeah.
now of making people false claims and promises of what they can create and do. That's definitely a Neptune
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. If you're
promise.
happening upon this video, it's meant for you, you know. Maybe sometimes. Maybe this
Yeah.
is an interesting way into the retrograde because like maybe part of like Neptune retrogrades involve like a reflecting upon yeah, like hoped for ideals and dreams and like, yeah, maybe like what I thought I wanted is actually just an idol, like and
Mhm.
yeah. What are your thoughts about the retrogrades?
The retrogrades, I think with all the planets from like Jupiter onwards, um, they happen every year.
They're
So
long.
Neptune's retrograde like half a year, every year.
Yeah.
So it's not as loud as a Venus retrograde or a Mars retrograde or Mercury retrograde, as a matter of fact. I will say the stations are very relevant. Like when a outer planet is stationing retrograde or stationing direct, that is usually very loud. Even louder if it's stationing at some degree that is transiting or aspecting some of your natal planets. Like that will usually be very much felt and
Yeah.
loud. So in that way, but like the retrogrades in and of itself are
Kind of amorphous, like it's just part
honestly,
of the transit
yeah.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't like I wouldn't be able to like sit here and be like, "Oh, this was my
It means
Neptune retrograde this year." Like no clue.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe there's like also maybe more of like a collective, like, I don't know, like if we could look at human civilization from outside of it, like maybe we would have some insight into like the outer planet retrogrades. But yeah, they just feel so big because their
Yeah,
time frames are so slow that what do you say about them? You know,
exactly. Again,
aside from the
again,
fact that they're
yeah.
retrograde.
It's more it's again it's going to be very relevant if it's passing
Yeah,
on a planet because then you're usually going to get three hits, like
yeah,
one direct, one retrograde, one direct again. And if it's again, it's like a stationing degree, even more relevant, but that is like very specific to your natal chart in general. Neptune retrogrades are again as common as Neptune being direct, pretty much. It's not that huge of a difference. I think usually when the stations are coming, that is mostly when there can be like an aha type of moment where it's like, like now I'm seeing this clearly. Whereas before it was kind of unclear, like, pair it with a Mercury retrograde or something like that. 100% I can see that. Otherwise, Neptune retrogrades are definitely not something I'm specifically looking out for at all. And I wouldn't recommend you doing that
yeah,
either.
yeah. It's just maybe an opportunity to make up meaning whether it's done. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we
Well,
had Neptune like collective cyclone trends. We already kind of talked a bit about
yeah.
that. Rolls into the other topic about like Neptune cycles with other
Inner.
outer planets or inner planets. One of them being relevant right now, which is Neptune and Saturn coming together, which happens
Hmm.
only every 36, right? Not 38. I think it's 36 years. So, not sure. I mean, certainly first time in my life type of transit. And these are usually going to be very collective. Again, everything upwards from Jupiter because all the other planets are gonna like do something way quicker. Like even Mars, that is slower moving than like Venus and Mercury. But that's why again, Jupiter takes like a year roughly to go through zodiac. Saturn takes 2.5 years. So everything that is like in turn with that is going to be much more relevant collectively and obviously also personally, depending on which houses it is transiting in your chart.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the kind of catchphrases for Saturn Neptune alignments is like the dissolution of structures. And I think especially with the conjunction, it's like a new moon. And this one's happening
Hmm.
at 0 degrees of Aries. So there's been a lot of like hubbub about it. And that makes sense. I think we are kind of I mean, just thinking about like the Epstein files and like the way that just totally, I mean, people had sort of like lost faith in the American dream anyway, but like just
Yeah.
when it's not just America, but the ruling, the rule of like justice and like goodness, the sort of illusion of that being upheld, like with all these people in all kinds of different spheres of public life being involved in this. Yeah, it does seem like, and then, with artificial intelligence really, it's like about to, I think, with robotics and the transformation to the workforce, like we are really entering into a different structure and like what it's going to look like, who knows? But yeah, the Neptune sort of like that dissolving agent and Saturn representing like these structures of society. And the traditions giving way and at the 0 degrees of Aries point, like maybe something pretty radical. Like I think, yeah, with the artificial intelligence, the changes are pretty unprecedented. Like, and it's interesting because I'm just seeing like the jobs that seem to be lasting are the jobs that in the beginning of like or maybe in the last few decades of like increasing technological innovation and emphasis on STEM fields, like we're sort of evaporating the humanities
Mm.
programs, but like now these AI companies, they want to employ people coming out of humanities and like, these are things that the bots aren't going to be able to do, like maybe they can give some helpful psychological feedback, but they can't replace like another soul, like I don't think. Um, so yeah, this is going to be, and we have, the other outer planets involved in this too. So it's more than just Saturn, Neptune, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I think it now it actually begins to look a lot less scary. I think now that Neptune is in Aries, people are again realizing how it's like I think with the late degrees Neptune and Pisces, people are very
Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
my
The
gosh,
nightmare.
the
Yeah.
nightmare exactly. And now it's and that's also very much like Pluto in Aquarius, feeling like we're in
Yeah.
like tech feudalism and all of that.
Dystopian cyberpunk future. Yeah.
Exactly. And now with Neptune Aries, we're very much like realizing what the like what can we actually like how are we different than AI? I think there was this big story of what AG not
Oh,
AG1.
AGI. Oh,
AG
AG1.
is it AG1? Because that's also like that drink anyhow. But like this super intelligence. Um and I think people are realizing now that it's like we're like pretty far away from that. Take it what you will. Certainly Uranus going into Gemini and what was his name? I think also something with Cornelius. I'm not sure, but like the godfather of AI, like he has Uranus and Gemini. So I'm like,
Oh, really?
this is gonna be so relevant, But we're gonna
Interesting.
realize many new things. And again, um everything Uranus is also always so scary in the beginning, and then we realize like,
Because it's
oh, it's
coming
like
so fast. Yeah.
yeah, because it's coming so fast and everything is gonna be a lot faster, It's because Neptune in Aries is in a Mars sign. Mars is a way faster planet than Jupiter, and Uranus is entering a Gemini ruled sign. Mercury is also a lot faster than Venus, so like of course things are picking up a lot more pace. But it's one thing that I always have to remind myself, and that I also like to remind other people with astrology is like it's so easy to like future trip and
Yeah. Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like doom and gloom and whatnot. But things usually only really make sense once we're in the transits. Like whatever you think Uranus and Gemini will be like, it's probably not going to be exactly that either. And same with personal transits. Like same with personal transits. Like I would lie if I didn't sit
Definitely.
here
Yeah.
and say that like I definitely have respect when Uranus is gonna conjoin my moon in Gemini at some point. Like it's definitely not something that I feel like, oh, that's going to be super easy, but it's probably not going to be what I think. Anyways, so there's things are going to make sense once they start happening. And yeah, also with Neptune, everybody that has Aries placements, don't be scared. Whatever you think Neptune will do to your placements, it's probably not going to be what Neptune actually ends up doing.
Words of wisdom. Yes, I feel like you learn that the longer you live with astrology, like the expectations we project, especially well, the dooming ones and the oh, like whenever Uranus went over my Venus, I was like expecting certain things,
Yeah.
But it was a great time. It was a fun time, but it didn't exactly. And then same with like Pluto crossing my ascendant. And I basically like went and that's when I went to Peru. I was like, I want to die and be reborn. And it was very foolish. It was like, so it's like you don't get to control these things, like, and so there is a kind of like, it's like a spiritual practice of restraint, like to
Yeah.
like not, because it will just feed our attachments and, yeah, create more suffering. Because you either don't get what you expect or you're in a premature hell because you're in a future that hasn't come, full of fear, like, and so anyway, words of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Aries is the sign of the present moment. So I think
Yeah.
with Neptune and Saturn being there right now, and they're both like kind of softening each other. I mean, certainly Neptune is softening Saturn, and Saturn is structuring the elusive Neptune. So I actually really like them together there. I think is very much going to bring us to that realization that is like it's about the present moment. At the end of the day, is coming back to the present moment. Yeah. So let's talk. This is going to sound so weird and out of context, but let's talk about the medical astrology part
Okay.
of because we
Yeah.
just mentioned that every single episode, and as a former nurse, how would I not find that interesting?
Oh, it's
Um,
so interesting. Yeah.
exactly. So in medical astrology, Neptune is associated with lymphatic fluids, no surprise, and the pineal gland, which regulates the sleep-wake cycle.
Hmm.
Again, no surprise either. And of course, Neptune also rules over altered states of consciousness, which are including sleep and dreams, also psychedelic
Hmm.
experiences and hypnosis. Yes, what that, oh yeah, Neptune can also lead to confusing, difficult to diagnose chronic conditions, as well as influence misdiagnosis. That can sometimes happen, right? Because things like you can't see things clearly. Um, yes, and can also be about like psychic attacks or things that people would say are curses. And yeah, Neptunian remedies are also often like more spiritual. So yeah, going on an ayahuasca trip, like
Uh-huh.
that's a Neptunian remedy or downfall. I don't know. Depends on where you are in your life. But
Right.
like going just generally going on like a spiritual retreat or a quest or like all of a sudden having the urge to be like screw school medicine, like I need to go to a shaman, like I need someone that's gonna look into my soul because taking taking pills is not helping me further. Like that is what Neptune transits can also do, which is probably the most relevant if Neptune is transiting your sixth house or your 12th house. But it can also, if it's like doing something to
Mm.
the ruler of your sixth house or 12th house, again, like that can also become a relevant thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that also like addiction might be connected with this. And uh also I don't know if anybody has noted this, but it seems like a connection, like just a kind of archetypal correspondence between Neptune and the discovery of fascia, like that sort of like
Mm,
subtle network of tissue throughout the body that connects all the organs. Like it feels very Neptunian. And also because, people who do the craniosacral work, like it's very subtle, but it's
yep.
powerful. So that also feels like kind of like a medical health body thing related to Neptune.
Yeah, I think it's just the things that are unseen that are
Yeah.
relevant, but that we can't like physically see or touch, which is why I also don't think Neptune is specifically associated with any like
Organ, yeah.
organ in that way, like the heart or like
Yeah,
the
nothing like
liver.
discrete and physical. Well, yeah,
Exactly.
maybe physical, but not like a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like even the pineal gland is so like kind of elusive,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way. And yet it regulates so much in our entire body. And if it's off balance, like that is not fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I think well, one thing that is definitely very true for Neptune transits is it's the dream realm. It is if Neptune is transiting any of your planets, but I think also just the dream realm itself is so it's like reality, but it's not reality. It's communicating through symbols and whatever you think, like you know about the dreams is usually not even what it is. Again, I always love James Hillman, The Dream and the Underworld, where he's also questioning, like, should we even write down our dreams and dissect them? Like, should we even do that? So, but that is, yeah, like the dream realm is, for sure. I think definitely Neptune can communicate to us through dreams, through dream imagery. But I am kind of siding here with James Hillman, and that is like after spending like 1.5 years dissecting my dreams, is that
Yeah,
I don't think we really have to do that because the dream realm is a separate realm where the same logic doesn't apply. And it's just our
yeah,
soul trying to regain some sort of control by analyzing our dreams that maybe carry a completely different symbolic meaning than whatever we think it does. And nowadays I'm just like, okay, I'll dream whatever I dream. It doesn't even have to specifically mean anything. If it does, I would say usually it's felt. Like if you're having like you're gonna know if you have a prophetic dream that it is a prophetic dream because you're gonna wake up and it's gonna mean something. Other than that, it's usually some mumble jumble thing of your subconscious just processing the day or something, which makes sense. But again, it's this elusive Neptunian realm where the same logic just doesn't apply. Like you can dream of certain people. That doesn't mean that these people symbolize that specific thing in your life. It's just your subconscious choose them to express something in that realm.
yeah, yeah. Again, words of wisdom. I have the same attitude toward dreams, especially because it was during the same time that I was like
Mm,
digging with psychedelics that I
yeah,
was obsessing over dreams. And yeah, it's just, and Steiner said something also very similar to what you described. Like, there's like different kinds of dreams, but most of our dreaming is just a reflection of our former day and our physiology. Like you're hot and you're dreaming of the oven like on, or
yeah,
but sometimes you have dreams that are visitations or because also like in the dream state we can have communications with beings on other states of existence. So, but when you have a dream like that.
exactly,
It's not
exactly.
ambiguous. Like one time I had a dream, it was so beautiful. It was like I was looking up at the stars and the star kept it was like descending and it kept getting closer and closer and closer to me. And then it just passed through my heart.
Hmm.
And I woke up and I was like exhilarated. And I was like, I don't know. I don't even try to like find a meaning for it because it was just
Exactly.
whatever that was. And so anyway, yeah, yeah.
I think maybe you can probably talk a bit more about that because personally, I don't have so much experience, but I think psychedelics are a very like the realm of psychedelics, but really anything that alters your state of consciousness, which can also be alcohol, right? But I
Yeah.
think drugs in and of itself are very Neptunian.
Yeah.
Um, and that experience, and I know there's also a lot of, again, you mentioned I think Ren Butler before, but he's like obviously also worked with like Richard Tarnas, like
Hmm.
all these people that realized, right, that is like what is like basically what they were doing, if you don't know, is that they were testing psychedelic therapy and then they were questioning why do the same people have different experiences in a different day or a year or a month. And they came to the conclusion that it's astrological transits. And what a controversial thing. But yeah, basically that led them. And Ren Butler, like in his book, The Archetypal Universe, he doesn't just talk, it's like a cookbook, like dissecting
Uh-huh.
transits. He also talks about what specific transits could induce or be relevant in psychedelic therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that actually that story was when Rick was working at Esalen and Stan Groff, who was this Czech psychiatrist. Oh, something just happened to my computer. Uh, they were like wondering, like, because Stan was one of the first psychiatrists in the 50s who were able to use LSD experimentally before it became illegal. And so they thought that it was mimicking psychosis. Anyway,
Mm.
so like he and Rick met in the 70s and worked together at Esalen, and this astrologer was there and was like, "Hey, you guys, you might want to like look at astrology because that might be a way for you to get insight into like why Sally like takes acid, at this time and then takes acid this time and has two different, totally different experiences, like one way more Neptunian, one way more Plutonic. And anyway, yeah, it's like the lore that
Yeah,
how
yeah,
Rick
that
got
is the
into
lore.
astrology. Yeah.
Um, and the Well, I feel like nowadays I'm neither a proponent, neither am I like against. I think it's just like if it's relevant to you, I
Same.
think these experiences are gonna come into your life. It's something that I've heard a lot of people talk about with ayahuasca, It's like the plant just calls you and you get a calling and you know, you take that calling if it calls you, which is very Neptunian, like in and of itself, even just like answering that call, because you got to believe that there is something in there.
Hmm.
Otherwise, if it's like forced, and I spent my years like in the psychedelic scene, like with like the
Yeah.
music where everyone's taking psychedelics. What a surprise.
Hmm.
And I saw like very much the negative side of like people taking acid, every week. And it's
Oh
not a fun
God.
place to be. Like it's not a fun place to be when you're constantly out
No.
of your body and whatever, all of that. So I think it's something that what with intentional use can be very useful. Again, exactly for these reasons, because you can tap into different realms and realities that maybe you otherwise couldn't have. And it can also like rewire your brain, right? Like there's a real like studies with how like if you've been in a depressed state, it can literally rewire your brain. So yeah, and we're in the country of the founding father Albert Hoffman.
Yes, right down the street in Basel. Yes.
Exactly. That had his famous bicycle trip one day, which, oh, I think, isn't there like an astrology chart for that day?
Oh,
I'm pretty
I'm
sure
sure.
there was Neptune was very relevant at that time.
I think it was maybe Uranus Neptune like alignment. Like what year was
Okay.
that? Here, let's look real quick.
I'm not quite sure, but that is I can only imagine how it felt like. I mean, how I read the book. I read his
Yeah.
book. So yeah, but his book is also called LSD, my worry child. I don't know if
Oh, my
it's
problem
my
child. Yeah.
problem child. Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So and he kind of came to that same conclusion of it, and it's right. It was for a long time. It was called Lyserg 25, and it was used here in the psychiatries. In Zurich as a treatment for patients until eventually it kind of got out of hand. Obviously, now people are
Uh-huh.
doing trials again and it's
Yeah.
becoming more relevant again. But yeah,
Let's see real quick. Oh, it was a trine. There was a trine between Uranus and Neptune,
okay.
but in Earth signs, Taurus and Virgo. But yeah, I can really relate to what you were saying. Like, I always think of Ram Dass, like he said, I believe he said, once you get the message, hang up the phone, like with the psychedelics.
Yeah,
Like, and
yeah,
I'm just like, I've done enough exploring. Maybe I will do more one day, but I definitely don't feel called to it now. And I don't recommend it to people. I don't recommend it to people. I don't discourage people, but because it can also re-pattern your brain in negative ways. So
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it just creates a more plastic state. So it depends on which direction you're going, and that's why, right, set and setting are so important. But yeah.
Agree, agree, agree. But it was also, and that might also be Neptune traveling through my first house, fifth house, sorry, to my fifth house, where it wasn't necessarily me specifically, even though
Uh-huh.
I did, like, I never took acid, but like I tried shrooms and all of that. But it was not the right, like, even though
Yeah.
I knew, but it was not the right setting or anything. And I think you just have to be very cautious when you do engage with these things. Like it's not a joke. Again, I've seen a lot of people also taking it every week and it not
No, it
affecting
changes.
them, but
Yeah. You can see
yeah,
it like a
you can
kind
see it
of
down the road.
Yeah, you
You
can.
can see it
Yeah.
down the road. There's always this argument of like, oh, but it's like not addictive.
Like,
As
no, maybe not chemically, but
Yeah,
like,
maybe not chemically, but like living, and that's, we can say that even now, like phone addiction, which is like dissociation, which like that is equally as hard as heroin. Like people really struggle with trying
yeah,
to not be on their phones. And that is Neptune as well. Like Neptune is not just substance addiction, it's any sort of addiction. And even limerence, like love addiction, like that is not a joke. Like that can impact your life significantly in your day to day, even if you're not taking substances, where it's very detrimental. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it goes back, I think, to that sort of principle of Neptune being the infinite and like the dissolution of boundaries and the divine love. And so
Yeah.
addictions pretty much in all forms are forms of idolatry and yeah, and the body is sort of like geared for them in a way, like once we kind of step into that. So
Yeah, yeah. I would recommend meditation. If anything, I would recommend meditation, which it doesn't have to be you sitting cross-legged. It can be if you want to. There's a reason why the lotus pose is composed that way. But it can also be just going out in nature and walking barefoot and becoming very aware of your environment, because the point is that you can experience the divine, which I would say is a realm of Neptune, in everything. And
Mhm.
then life becomes very livable. And then it's like a better experience of Neptune than the one where it's about trying to get a hit from that thing again, where you feel like I can only get that when I'm on acid, or like I can only get that when this other person will love me or something like that. So I think it's truly about experiencing divine in big moments as also in small moments, because the big moments are real. There's so many evidences of people, going to church or going to dancing kirtan, chanting mantras. You get that same ecstasy and high as well that you can potentially get
yeah,
with any sort of drug. It's the same type of experience. You get there, but you're not meant to be there at all times.
yeah, yep, because we're mortal and finite, and yep, amen.
Exactly. Which is, I think, also one of the ways that, like, this is how you build a relationship to Neptune, which
Yeah, yeah,
is, I talked a bit about that with the Uranus episode. The outer planets is a very different way that you build a relationship to them, because it's almost like you don't build a relationship with them, they build a relationship with you by like just coming into your life with these experiences. And then it's depends on you what you do with them. Like, are you gonna experience them and just be in them? Because again, with Neptune, it's a once in a lifetime thing. Or what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna go into that archetypal field and take that? I think for me, that is the best way to be in relationship with Neptune.
yeah. I mean, I think the outer planets, like, in some ways, like the rituals and traditions and spiritual literature of the various religious traditions in the world are like helping human beings interface with these powers, and these aspects of our existence. And like you were saying, like meditation or like a contemplative orientation to life, like you can feel eternity in the midst of time and
Mm,
or like infinity, like Blake in the grain of sand.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and artistic expression I feel like is another way of like really like we were talking about acting earlier. I've been involved here at the Goetheanum in the theater class and like we're doing improv and like to be in that state of like play
Mhm.
where like you're unbound by like social pressure to behave a certain way or any kind of like
Yeah.
concern with survival. You're just like in the midst of like free play. Like that I think is another way to like contact Neptune. Yeah.
Yes. Again, tapping into the archetypes at your will and just seeing what happens if you dress a certain way, go out, change your name, interact in a different way. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
definitely a fun thing. And again, it can also be ritualistic, right? I did a whole thing with like ritual mask building. And then you set up a stage, and even more deliberately, you literally put on a mask. So go into a certain archetype, and you can experience different things. And you can also, it's the same with what is it called? Oh, it's in German, it's like aufstellen. Like when you do like this family thing where you're like
Oh,
position
family
people.
constellations?
Oh,
Or
constellations, exactly. Like that's kind of that realm as well, right? Where you don't, it's not that your exact mother has to be there, but
yeah.
by relating to her archetype through a different person, you can still heal something in yourself without the actual person needing to be present for that.
Yeah. Yeah, another way maybe to connect with Neptune is just to take a bath. Right? Or to
Oh
like
yeah.
get in the pool and float. Just like feel like one with the water. Like I was doing that a lot one year because I hurt my back and I needed exercise and I was just like floating and I was like, wow, this feels healing, like to just float, and become like
Full
nothing.
on agree.
Yeah.
Oh, or these water tanks. I
Oh
did that
yeah.
only once, but where it's really they put so much salt in that tank, so you're literally floating, and usually you can also sometimes even turn off the light, which is a
Yeah.
bit scary. I didn't do that, but you can do that. And so you're literally like a floating orbit in space and lose yourself completely. That is definitely experiencing Neptune.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah.
Okay, should we I didn't send you the Orphic hymn, by the way, but there's usually I make
Oh,
all my
cool.
guests recite the Orphic hymn, which for Neptune, I believe it's Poseidon. Um,
Okay, cool.
right, so maybe if you can Google that.
Yeah. Oh, just
Oh
look it
God.
up. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I usually always send it to people, but of course it's Mercury retrograde now.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
All right. How does yours start?
Okay, the one that I have is like here Neptune or Poseidon, ruler of the sea,
Oh, I think I.
profound.
Um,
Well, I can send
oh
you the
yeah, yeah, I
one.
see it. I see it
Okay, cool.
here.
I'm gonna let you recite that one, and this is how we're kind of gonna close this off afterwards.
Okay. Do I read? Well, I see. Hold on. Oh, okay. Yeah, here we go. Okay, cool. Just tell me when.
Start when you feel ready.
Read the whole thing, right?
hmm
Okay. Here, Neptune, ruler of the sea profound, whose liquid grasp begirts the solid ground, who, at the bottom of the stormy main, dark and deep-bosomed, holdest thy watery reign, thy awful hand the brazen trident bears, and ocean's utmost bound thy will reveres. Thee I invoke, whose steeds the foam divide, from whose dark locks the briny waters glide, whose voice loud founding throw, the roaring deep drives all its billows in a raging heap. When fiercely riding thro' the boiling sea, thy hoarse command the trembling waves obey. Earth shaking, dark-haired God, the liquid plains, the third division, fate to thee ordains. 'Tis thine cerulean daemon to survey well pleased the monsters of the ocean play, confirm earth's basis, and with prosperous gales waft ships along, and swell the spacious sails, add gentle peace and fair-haired health beside, and pour abundance in a blameless tide.
Amazing.
That was fun.
Heck yeah. Well, so since we're coming to an end, I'm gonna let you shout out whatever you want to shout out. Where can people find you? How can people work with you if they want to?
Thank you very much for that opportunity. So my on social media, my name is Microcosm. That's MICR0K0SM. So that's like my screen name on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, uh, Substack, and then that's also my website URL. So I do astrology readings and supplemented by tarot pools, and yeah, microcosm.com with zeros and a K. So that's how you can find me.
Heck yeah. So everything will be linked in down in the description below. And yeah, this podcast is available on YouTube and on Spotify, depending on where you are. You can check out the latter. Always happy if people leave reviews or likes or any comments. And if you have any further thoughts, feel free to email any of us if you have any questions around Neptune or any of the like. You can message both of us on Instagram. We'll be happy to answer. Again, you can, this is Resonance Astrology, and everything on my end is also found under Resonance Astrology, which is Instagram, well, on YouTube and Spotify, and also my website. And yeah, I think that's what I have to say. The next planet we're going to talk about is Pluto. And let's see what's going to happen after that. I'm thinking of perhaps doing a Chiron episode, but I'm not sure yet. Just letting everyone know. So, yeah, if you've enjoyed the post, feel free to engage. It would be super appreciated. Thank you, Ashton, for being on and talking about Neptune. It has been super fun.
Thank you, Amiya. Yeah, it was a privilege, and yeah, just we have great synergy, so really enjoyed it.
Heck yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're gonna talk to each other soon.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah.